Warner Brothers has practically ruined the DCU, but they seem to think that one man can fix everything. That man is James Gunn, and it turns out that he just got the big job. He'll be running the DCU from now on, so it looks like the cinematic universe is about to get a big ol' makeover, which doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. After all, Warner Brothers needs all the help that it can get if it wants to catch up with Disney and the MCU, and all of their attempts so far have been pretty miserable. From the Snyderverse fiasco to the jarring tonal shifts when Whedon took the helm, the DCU has been passed from person to person with no one bringing anything good to the table. You can argue that Zack Snyder at least tried to stay true to the comics, but even then, his vision was a bit too dark and grandiose to be any fun. This makes Gunn seem like the perfect candidate to take up the mantle. The guy's directed some great movies, with Guardians of the Galaxy launching his career, and he even managed to give the DCU one of its first truly great movies with the Suicide Squad. But does he really deserve to be DC's Kevin Feige after a few good flicks? Well, it's not necessarily a bad idea, but once I heard his vision for the DCU, I started to get kinda worried.
Well, let me get this straight. You think that killing those guys is funny?
I do. And I'm tired of pretending it's not.
James Gunn is looking to start from scratch, and it's not without good reason. The DCU has had one bad movie after another, with just a couple of them giving us something to enjoy. And even the few good ones seemed like one-offs that didn't give us a coherent overarching narrative. So instead of trying to save a sinking ship, Gunn is clearly looking to break off from that whole disaster and start something brand new. It'll give him the chance to recast a lot of roles with younger actors, and we've already seen how well that worked with the Batman. In fact, Robert Pattinson's turn as the Dark Knight might have convinced the studio that they've had the wrong approach all along.
I don't care about that. Any of that. If I can't change things here, if I can't have an effect, I don't care what happens to me.
That's all I'm afraid of.
Alfred, stop. You're not my father.
I mean, they basically glossed over Batman's whole arc in the Justice League. We got to see our favorite superhero when he was already old and jaded. Where's the fun in that? Restarting everything could let us witness a singular vision, similar to what the MCU has done from day one. But there's a bit of a problem that no one seems to be mentioning, and it makes me think that this whole reboot idea is really gonna
taking things a little more seriously. Here's my card.
There are already major actors attached to big roles, whether it's Jason Momoa as Aquaman, or Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. So many iconic DC superheroes already have famous actors who've made the roles their own. Batfleck is definitely over for good, but what about the rest? Momoa has a brand new Aquaman film coming out this year, not to mention Ezra Miller, who somehow still hung on to The Flash, which is also coming out this year. That makes at least 2 new DC movies on the 2023 roster, 3 if we count the sequel to The Joker, although they can always use the alternate universe excuse for that one. So what gives? Are they just gonna ignore all of this and move on to the next big thing? Well, it pains me to say this, but that might actually be their whole plan. They're gonna pull a Flashpoint. This explains why they're still up for Ezra Miller's The Flash despite all the controversy. Basically, it seems like they're gonna use it to set up a retcon. It's been done a bunch of times in the comics, so it's not like it's unprecedented. But given all that's happened, it just seems kinda lazy, especially when you have actors like Momoa who have raked in over $1 billion in their solo flicks. Whenever we've had a retcon in the comics, it's come after a ton of build-up, not out of the blue, which is how they're doing it right now, and it makes me doubt that they'd be able to do it justice. However, it'd be a pretty convenient way to bid goodbye to the DCU's unfortunate Phase 1.
Never start with the head. The victim gets all fuzzy. He can't feel the neck.
And as for Momoa, we've all heard the rumors that he'd keep working with the DCU, but he might end up playing a different character. Some rumors even suggest that he could play Superman's wisecracking nemesis, Lobo, which somehow makes all of this sound even worse. I mean, seriously, do they really expect me to forget that the guy played Aquaman and just accept him in a new role? I haven't even gotten to the worst part yet, because even though they're keeping Momoa, there's an even bigger actor that's getting the boot. Henry Cavill won't be coming back. You heard that right. The guy that gave us one of the best performances as Superman just got done dirty all over again. After losing The Witcher, it seems like Cavill's gonna be stepping away from the DCU as well. And boy, am I gonna miss him. But Gunn clearly just wants us to forget everything that came before, and recasting Superman will make that way easier. It'd give us a new approach to the last son of Krypton and potentially let him collab with Pattinson's Batman. But at what cost? Cavill has defined the role for a generation, and it'll just be so hard to watch someone else don the cape. This just seems like a bad decision all around.
Who the hell are you? Jason Todd? The new Robin? Robin 2.0, right? Hey, seriously, man.
Especially given how fast everything's been happening. And what makes things even worse is that they don't seem to be doing it for the right reasons. They're copying the worst parts of the MCU. Look, I get it. The MCU basically introduced the concept of an interconnected cinematic universe. And I understand why Warner Brothers wants to copy that. I really do. But does it really have to be such a carbon copy? Gunn has already put his own spin on a treasured DC classic with the Suicide Squad. And I wasn't the only one who felt like it was a bit too similar to Guardians of the Galaxy.
You're eating a Zarg nut. But my movement was so slow that it's imperceptible.
A few jokes here and there are fine, but are we gonna get the same treatment with the whole rebooted universe? It all just feels like a desperate attempt to get traction, and they don't seem to understand that MCU fans aren't exactly loving the content overload either. I'm not alone in thinking that the MCU could do with a bit of slimming down, because do we really need shows and spin-offs about every single character? If you ask Warner Brothers, they'll probably say yes, and Gunn will most likely agree. And I haven't even mentioned the elephant in the room. The DCU goes beyond the films. If you're a fan of DC characters, there's a huge treasure trove of content on TV, so you'd have something to watch even if you don't like the movies. The Arrowverse is a big deal, of course, and we've already seen a solid depiction of the Flash. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but this show and many others like it have a huge fan base. Where will all of this fit into the new and improved DCU? Is Gunn gonna cancel everything while he's on this power trip? Wonder Woman 3 and the Black Adam sequel are already out the door, and I can't imagine what'd happen if he does the same thing with all of the great shows out there. If anything, it's going to have a terrible impact on a dedicated fan base and ruin all sorts of great content, just so that Warner Brothers can try to copy the MCU. That's what's happening with James Gunn and the DC Universe. See you in the next video.